Welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha, a podcast shared by David Roylance. This podcast is dedicated to guiding you to completely eliminate the discontent mind and the suffering it causes by attaining enlightenment. Learn and practice the teachings of Gautama Buddha that will guide you to fully attain a peaceful, calm, serene, and content mind with joy. To support this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha or visit buddhadailywisdom.com, where you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online learning resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Now, here's our teacher to share more.
Sawadee Kap. Hello and welcome to Daily Wisdom, Walking the Path with the Buddha. Today is our group learning program, and we're starting a 4-part series to learn loving kindness meditation. Today I'm going to be teaching you loving kindness meditation, and then afterwards we'll do a session together. This meditation is designed in order to help you eliminate anger, hatred, ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, irritation, annoyance. Those are all in the mind being caused by the mind itself, and you can actually eliminate these. By the time you get to enlightenment, you won't even have the slightest dislike towards another being. Right now, that might be challenging for you, but as you build up your mind and you eliminate the pollutions of mind, you can get to the point where you have harmonious relationships with everyone around you. But of course, this is going to take time. So this meditation is going to essentially rewire your mind and transform it so that you can be loving and kind with all the individuals around you. It also helps you to develop a more loving and kind attitude towards yourself. If you have a negative inner dialogue or kind of this negative and degrading self-talk within your own mind, where maybe you're feeling guilty and shameful and you're beating yourself up for even the slightest little things that you do that are unwise, this meditation is going to help you with that too. So I'm going to teach it to you first, and then we're going to actually do it together. So welcome to all of you guys, whether you're joining for the first time or you're joining regularly. I'm going to just switch over to some visual aids here to help me be able to share this with you guys and be able to teach you all about loving kindness meditation. Okay, so as I mentioned, this is part 1 of a 4-part series. Today I'm going to teach you loving kindness meditation, and we're going to do it together. And then in the subsequent sessions, we're just going to do loving kindness meditation, and then I'll open up to any questions, essentially building you guys up over a 4-week period. Because if you've been doing breathing mindfulness meditation now from the beginning of the group learning program, which has been about 4 weeks or so, it's now time to start potentially bringing in loving kindness meditation. So you'd like to have a really nice, stable, and steady breathing mindfulness meditation practice for at least 2 to 4 weeks minimum, and then maybe for some people even upwards of 6 to 8 weeks before you bring in loving kindness meditation. When you see that you're getting stabilized in that meditation, meaning that you know how to do it and you're doing it regularly, that's the time to start bringing in loving kindness meditation. As I've shown you before, these meditations are either eliminating certain unwholesome qualities from your mind and or cultivating certain wholesome qualities. And this loving kindness meditation is no different, that you're cultivating certain wholesome qualities and eliminating certain unwholesome qualities. This meditation of loving kindness, we're going to do a little bit of breathing mindfulness first, then we're going to go into the loving kindness meditation, then we're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation. So you know from the previous sessions that the breathing mindfulness meditation is eliminating craving, desire, attachment from the mind, where the mind's holding on, it doesn't want to let go. And then it's cultivating the mindfulness or awareness of mind and helping you to develop concentration. This is what's helping you to eliminate the cravings, desires, attachments, and get to the point where you're knocking down the causes of all your discontentedness. Just by doing breathing mindfulness meditation, it will knock down some of your anger and all those other discontent feelings as well. But then there's a meditation to specifically go in and get rid of the anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, and even, as I mentioned, the slightest dislike towards others, any kind of resentment or hostility or bitterness. So this loving kindness meditation is going to eliminate all of that stuff, not only towards other people, but towards yourself as well. And then this meditation is helping you to cultivate the loving kindness for all beings. This being included, the being being who you are, right? So it's not just others that you need to be able to eliminate your anger and hatred for, but it's yourself as well. Sometimes what the mind does in the unenlightened state is it holds on to this anger because maybe you thought in the past that somebody made you angry, and now maybe you push that person aside, or you were bitter, harsh, and hostile with that person, or you've put your expectations on that person. And as you were doing that, it was damaging your relationships and you weren't able to be harmonious with all beings. And now maybe what you're doing is you're holding on to the anger within your own mind, thinking that this is how you're going to get back at this person for what they did to you, where in reality, they didn't necessarily do anything to you. If your mind got angry, it was caused by your mind itself. But sometimes the mind holds on to this resentment and hostility and this bitterness. And this is kind of like, if you're holding on to this in order to get back at that other person, it's like holding on to a hot coal and trying to burn somebody else. You're not going to be able to do that. You're actually just burning yourself. So what you would like to do is uproot this anger out of the mind so that you can get liberated and feel free of all of these discontent feelings, including these anger, hatred, and ill will, and all those lesser versions. So the Buddha taught loving kindness at various parts in his teachings, and I'm going to share with you first a definition of what loving kindness is, and then I'm going to share with you some words of the Buddha where you can see that he actually taught loving kindness and loving kindness meditation, so you can have confidence that this is part of the path to enlightenment. But first, what loving kindness is it's a mental state. It's active goodwill towards all beings without judgment, where you're not judging other beings to determine whether they deserve your love and kindness and your goodwill, but you're just practicing this love and kindness, this genuine interest in seeing all beings be well without judging others. Sometimes we're taught, don't respect others until they respect you. But if everybody practiced this way, then nobody would be respecting anybody, because everybody would be holding back their respect, waiting for someone else to respect you before you would respect others. So if you did that with your loving kindness, it would be like, I'm not going to be loving and kind with you until you're loving and kind with me. Or you might be judging this person to see if they deserve your love and your kindness. But that's not how an enlightened being functions. An enlightened being would be loving and kind with all beings around them. They wouldn't be judging whether they deserve this loving kindness or not. So it's a mental state that you're cultivating in the mind. And ultimately, you're going to need to go out into the world and practice this through your intention, speech, and actions. If you talk with people who are used to using the Pali words, you might hear somebody refer to this as metta. This is a common way that people refer to loving metta, because this is the Pali word. And some people refer to it as metta meditation. But for me, I just teach in English. There's only 2 words that I still need to use that are Pali. And it's best to just use the English words, because then you can fully understand it right from the beginning and start applying it and getting the most benefits from the work that you're doing to learn and practice the teachings. Loving kindness is an antidote or a remedy towards anger, hatred, and ill will. We also refer to this as a wholesome root, that whenever you're making decisions through loving kindness, it's always going to produce wholesome results or wholesome dhamma. That's why it's referred to as a wholesome root. It's an antidote or a remedy to this anger, hatred, ill will, the bitterness, the hostility, the resentment in the mind. It'll eliminate all of this. It's also part of what's referred to as the Brahma Viharas. This is something I'm going to teach you when we get to chapter 14. There's 4 healthy mental states, and loving kindness is the first one. Then there's compassion, sympathetic joy, and equanimity. These are 4 healthy mental states that need to be cultivated in the mind in order to produce enlightenment. And when we get to that point in chapter 14, I'll teach this to you. But just know that it's one of these 4 healthy mental states. It's referred to as the Brahma Viharas, and I'll explain to you where that comes from, but you can think of it as part of the 4 healthy mental states. In terms of the Eightfold Path, which you've learned already, at least been exposed to it at the beginning of our program, as I taught you, that's the core central teaching of the Buddha that everything else plugs into. The Buddha teaches about loving kindness in the Eightfold Path because the Eightfold Path is the path to enlightenment. And you're going to need to know that inside and out, backwards and forwards, in order to be able to get to enlightenment. So you're going to need to know about loving kindness, and you're going to need a tool or a technique to be able to cultivate it in order to practice this path to enlightenment. So if you remember back to right intention, the Buddha talks about 3 intentions or thinking or thoughts that need to be cultivated in the mind. The intention of renunciation, non-ill will, and harmlessness. The way of saying non-ill will, that's a double negative. That's the same way as saying goodwill. So he's talking about cultivating the intention or the thinking or the thoughts of goodwill, and practicing harmlessness, where you're disinterested or incapable of causing harm to other beings. If you remember when I was teaching right speech, I taught you the 5 factors of well-spoken speech. Speaking at the proper time, what you say is true, gentle, beneficial, and the 5th factor is spoken with a mind of loving kindness. Well, how could you speak with a mind of loving kindness if you didn't have a way to cultivate this in the mind? So you're going to need to cultivate the loving kindness in the mind so that your speech and your actions can emanate from that. And if you remember even right action, the Buddha teaches to eliminate killing, stealing, and sexual misconduct. To do any of those kinds of things, there needs to be a certain amount of ill will in the mind. So even though he doesn't call out loving kindness as part of right action, you can see how cultivating loving kindness will help you to practice right action where you're not killing, stealing, or having sexual misconduct. And even the right livelihood and eliminating harmful livelihoods. Your loving kindness is going to help you to move those kinds of things into practice as well. Here's a teaching from the Buddha where I've kind of extracted this from the Buddha's teachings. He had this longer discourse where he was teaching the 5 factors of well-spoken speech, and he was reminding his students that while he was teaching them to practice speaking at the proper time, speaking truth, speaking gentle with benefit and with a mind of loving kindness, he was reminding them that, hey, other people aren't going to talk to you that way all the time, that they're going to sometimes speak with you in an untimely way, or they're going to speak to you falsehoods. They're going to speak harsh. They're going to speak unbeneficially, and they're going to speak with a mind of inner hate in some situations. And the Buddha is saying, okay, when people speak to you, when they're not speaking right speech, how should we respond? How should we function? And he says, herein, monks, you should train thus. Our minds will remain unaffected, and we shall utter no evil words. We shall reside compassionate for their welfare, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. We shall reside enveloping that person with a mind filled with loving kindness, and starting with him, we shall reside enveloping the all-encompassing world with a mind filled with loving kindness, abundant, joyful, immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will. That is how you should train, monks. So he's saying no matter what people say to you, what you should do is remain unaffected. And this comes with training, right? You're not going to be able to just snap your fingers and do this. You're going to need to remain unaffected. You're going to need to ensure you're not uttering evil words. Because when someone's coming at you with hate, if you send hate and anger back to them, it just keeps it bouncing around the room. You would like to have this compassion for their welfare. That's where you would like to be able to reside, with a mind of loving kindness, without inner hate. Understand that this person is really struggling in life, and there's no need for you to utter evil words back, because that's not going to produce any beneficial results. You need to just bite your tongue in some situations and walk away. And that's what you might be doing at the beginning. But then over time, you might just be quietly frustrated. And then over time, with more training, you'll notice that the anger doesn't even arise anymore, because you've eliminated the causes and conditions that are producing it. So the way that you reside with a mind filled with loving kindness that is abundant, joyful, and immeasurable, without hostility and without ill will, is you practice loving kindness meditation. That's going to knock down your ill will towards other beings and get to the point where you're not putting out hostility. Because as long as you're putting out hostility, that's all going to come back to you. So that's why the Buddha is teaching you to shut that down. And he's giving you this technique of loving kindness meditation to be able to accomplish that. So here's some words of the Buddha where he's specifically talking about loving kindness meditation and practicing loving kindness. This first one He's talking to his son, Rahula. Some people think that the Buddha left his family and he never came back. This isn't actually true. He did leave for 6 years in order to train his mind, but ultimately he came back, and his son, his wife, his stepmother, cousins, and brother-in-laws, and people like this all started ordaining with him. So here he's teaching his son, Rahula. He's saying, Rahula, develop meditation on loving kindness. For when you develop meditation on loving kindness, any ill will be abandoned. So this is the way a Buddha speaks. Very clear, very concise. You don't need to interpret their words and figure out what it is that they're teaching. He's just making it very clear for you. Essentially, hey, if you would like to eliminate ill will, it's loving kindness meditation that's going to do that for you. That's what worked for the Buddha, and that's what's going to work for other people too. That's why he taught it, because he knows that that's what worked for him, so it's going to work for other people too. So here he's just teaching his son this, and he would have taught other people as well, not just his son, but this is the one that was documented. And then as you're cultivating the mind with loving kindness and you're kind of filling that up, almost like you're filling up a gas tank, then you need to go out into the world and practice loving kindness through your intentions, your speech, and your actions. And that's part of what the Buddha is sharing here, where he says loving kindness should be developed to abandon ill will, right? He's saying that anger, hatred, ill will, frustration, agitation, anything that comes out of that particular fetter or that pollution, it's going to be eliminated through loving kindness and cultivating loving kindness in the mind. But you can't just meditate your way to the elimination of anger. You're going to need to go out into the world through your intentions, your speech, and your actions, and practice being loving and kind with the people around you. That's where the real transformation is occurring. The meditation is just kind of filling up your mind and making it possible for you to go out into the world and be loving and kind with the people around you. Because you could do 23 hours of meditation a day, not that you could, but let's just say you could. And if you went out in the world for an hour a day and you're being bitter and harsh and hostile with people, your mind's not enlightened. You're not going to have a peaceful mind. You still have anger. So you need to be able to not only cultivate the mind with loving kindness, but go out into the world and practice through your intention, speech, and actions, being loving and kind. Here the Buddha is teaching some of his students. I'll give you some backstory on this so that you'll understand the context. That during the lifetime of the Buddha, there were multiple people teaching. You might think that when a Buddha is alive, that he's the only game in town and everybody's learning from him. Because if a Buddha was alive during your lifetime, surely you'd be interested in learning from that person, right? You'd like to go directly to that person and learn. But there's no outward characteristics like a turned ear or a mole or anything like that that's going to determine that this person is a Buddha. So not everybody knew that he was a Buddha. There were other people that were teaching and claiming that it was their teachings that led to enlightenment. And those people's students and the students of the Buddha would sometimes come together and they would eat their food together and they would talk and they would chat. And it would be like, hey, what is your teacher teaching you? And hey, what is your teacher teaching you? This kind of thing goes on even today. So the Buddha, realizing that his students talk with other students, here he says to them, his own students, he says, suppose they ask, meaning suppose those other students ask, but what, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and anger is abandoned? You should answer, the liberation of the mind by loving kindness. So the freedom of the mind by loving kindness. That's what's going to eliminate the anger and ensure that arisen anger is abandoned. For one who attends carefully to the liberation of mind by loving kindness, unarisen anger does not arise, and arisen anger is abandoned. This, friends, is the reason unarisen anger does not arise and arisen anger is abandoned. So what unarisen anger is like right now you're just listening to me talk, whether it's live or whether it's on a replay, you're just listening to a teacher talk. Your anger hasn't arisen, but inside your mind, you have a deeply rooted container of ill will. This is a mental object. And if one of your cravings, desires, attachments get triggered, that ill will is going to arise. That's unarisen anger. It hasn't arisen right now, but it's buried deep inside your mind. So the Buddha is saying, what's the reason this unarisen anger will not arise? Well, it's the cultivation of mind by loving kindness. And then he says, what is it that once this anger has arisen, how do you abandon it? How do you get rid of it? Well, it's loving kindness. That's what's going to abandon that. Eventually, you'll break up this ill will out of your mind to the point where it won't exist anymore. Loving kindness meditation in practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life is essentially like a jackhammer that's jackhammering this ill will out of your mind. And when you fully get it out of your mind, when you uproot it, it won't be there anymore. And you will never experience anger ever again. Even those lesser versions like frustration, agitation, annoyance, or even the slightest dislike towards another being. But of course, this all takes time. It's not going to be one meditation or 10 meditations. It's going to be consistent long-term meditation over a long-term period, multiple years. Now, in other classes, you've heard me talk about meditating 2 to 3 times a day for 30 minutes or more. And this is what I typically suggest in the classes where I'm talking about that. Well, at least one of those sessions should be a loving kindness meditation session. You like at least one of them to be loving kindness. And if you make your morning session the loving kindness, this is going to set you up for a really great day, because now you can go out into the world with more loving kindness in your mind, and through your intention, speech, and actions, you can be more loving and kind. But that doesn't mean you couldn't do loving kindness meditation in the middle of the day or the evening. Maybe at 4 p.m., you're on your way home from work, someone cuts you off in traffic, you feel a bunch of anger arise, and maybe even though you weren't planning to do loving kindness that night, you decide to do it because you notice there's some anger in your mind. So the longer you allow this anger to stay in your mind, and your mind stays wired that way, the more it's going to continue to do that. So you like to stomp this out and cut it out of the mind as soon as possible. So if I was you, as soon as you walk in the door, go right to your meditation. Of course, you might use the bathroom. You might say, hello, honey, I'm home. Kiss, kiss, kiss. Hug, hug, hug. I'll see you in a little bit. And you just go to the room and get your meditation going, right? Because you're not interested in allowing your mind to stay wired this way with the anger, right? So you'd like to get that out. So if you're doing meditation in the morning, middle of the day, in the evening, if you make at least one of those loving kindness in the morning being ideal, that would be great. But if you're going through a period of time where you're noticing a lot of anger in your mind, you could make every session a loving kindness meditation. So you need to pay attention with your mindfulness or your awareness of mind of what's going on in your mind. Are you noticing any anger? And if you're noticing that, then make sure you're using this more than once a day. When you go 6 months or a year and you're not noticing any anger or any frustration or irritation or the slightest little annoyance, you won't need loving kindness meditation any longer. But you shouldn't be in a hurry to eliminate this from your practice. You'd like to see a good 6 months to a year of no anger, hatred, ill will, any of those lesser versions like frustration, irritation, annoyance, or even the slightest dislike towards other beings. Okay, so let me pause and see if you guys have any questions here before I actually teach you how to do the loving kindness meditation and we actually do it together. You can put this into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Okay, I'm not seeing any questions anywhere. So I'm going to move into teaching you guys how to do this. What we do is we lead into the meditation with the chanting, just like we do with breathing mindfulness meditation. I chant on the way in. This kind of eases the mind into the meditation. It helps to build awareness of breath, awareness of the mind, helps it develop concentration. It's not a rite, a ritual, or ceremony or anything like that. It's just to ease the mind into the meditation. Okay, once we're in the meditation, it's wise to do about 3 to 5 minutes worth of breathing mindfulness meditation, just to kind of get the mind fixed to the breath and being attentive and focused and alert, breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. So about 3 to 5 minutes worth of meditation on breathing mindfulness meditation. And I'm going to guide you at the beginning. Then there's going to be a brief period of time where we're just meditating with breathing mindfulness meditation. Then I'm going to come in with these affirmations to guide you in this meditation, where I'm going to say things like, may I be peaceful. And you like to do this on the out breath. Okay, and then I'm going to breathe in, and then I'm going to say, may I be safe. And then I'm going to go out with the out breath, may I be well. Each one of these affirmations is on the out breath. May I be free of all discontentedness in the suffering it causes. So you start with I, because you can't have loving kindness for others if you don't have a loving and kind relationship with yourself. So you need to start with I. Then you're going to go through these successive rings. I'm going to create about 6 rings. I'm just using this here as a visual aid So we're not going to actually do exactly the way it's here. This is just a structure to show you what we're going to be doing as a structure. So what you would like to do is create these multiple rings and then eventually get to all beings where you haven't left anyone out, and you go through all 4 statements. Now, when I do this with you guys, I'm going to create a meditation such that it applies to all of us. But you would like to customize this for your specific needs. So if you have someone named Bob or Susie or Barbara or Rebecca in your mind that you have anger and hatred for, you're going to need to include them. You might need to call them out in your own mind when you customize this on your own. It might be, may Rebecca be peaceful. May Rebecca be safe. May Rebecca be well. May Rebecca be free of discontentedness and the suffering it causes. This is rewiring your mind. This isn't invoking some higher power. This isn't trying to change Rebecca. This isn't sending her loving kindness. This is rewiring your mind so that now, more and more, when you do that and you're around Rebecca, you can be more loving and kind with her through your intention, speech, and actions. So you can do current people that you're involved with now and that you have relationships with, but you can also do people from the past, people that maybe you'll never ever see again. They could actually even be dead. But if your mind's holding on to any kind of anger or hatred or resentment or bitterness, this is only hurting you. It's like holding that hot coal and trying to burn somebody else. So you're going to need to customize your meditation over time, where you'd like to put maybe like a ring or two of people that you have loving kindness for. This is going to kind of bubble up the loving kindness in your own mind. Then you'd like to do like a ring or two of people that you're more neutral about. Maybe like a coworker or maybe your neighbors or something like this. You don't necessarily hate them, but you don't necessarily love them either. You're just kind of more neutral about them, right? So you like to put a ring or two of them in there. Then you'd like to get to a ring or two of people you do have anger, hatred, and ill will towards. And you might put them in your meditation for a good week or two or a few months even. I had a lot of resentment towards my mom when I was growing up, so she was in my meditation for a good 6 months before I realized that my mind had fully let go of any anger towards her and I was able to take her out. So this meditation is going to be customized. It's going to change over time. And then ultimately you would like to get to all beings. So you can customize this based on your specific needs. When I was doing this initially, I was still in business and I had a business in America. There were times where I would be having some challenges with a coworker or a customer or something like this, and they would show up in my meditation for a few days or a week or two. Or maybe I was driving down the street and somebody cut me off. I didn't even know that person's name, but just to make sure that I didn't hold on to any anger, maybe for 2 or 3 days, they were in my meditation. May that person who cut me off in traffic be peaceful, right? And this actually helps you because not only do you do it in meditation, but in your day-to-day life, what I noticed is when people started cutting me off, I would just say, may you be well, brother. Take that lane. It's yours, right? You don't have to just hold on to it and crave it and long and yearn for it. You can be doing these affirmations in meditation, but you might notice that you start speaking these things in day-to-day life when someone cuts you off. Instead of laying on the horn, hey, may you be safe, brother. Go ahead. You got it. It's yours, right? You might be saying those kinds of things. That'll help to ensure that the mind doesn't hold on to any anger or anything like that. And you can customize this over time where there was even a situation where a landlord came in one time. He was up in my face, threatening to kill me in front of my customers and my employees. He was yelling and hollering at the top of his lungs. There was even spit coming out of his mouth. He was right up in my face. And I needed to stay calm and peaceful. He showed up in the meditation for about a week or so, making sure that the mind didn't grab onto any anger and hold on to it. So you're going to need to customize this as you go forward in life. You might have your kind of standard people in there, like your parents or your life partner, your children. They might be in there regularly, and not that you have any anger towards them necessarily, but you would like to maintain that. You would like to cultivate that. Oftentimes it's the people that are closest to us that you might have the deepest attachment to, and you have the more difficulties with anger towards them, right? Because you want them to be a certain way. So you might need them in there for a good long period of time. And then those other people, they kind of come and go in and out of your meditation. So there's going to be these 6 rings that you're going to hear me say, and as you hear me say them, whenever you get to your out breath, you can say those within your own mind. Then we're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness meditation, and then we're going to go back to the chanting. So it's kind of like a loving kindness sandwich, where you've got loving kindness in the middle. Then you've got your lettuce and tomato, that's the breathing mindfulness meditation. Then you've got the bread holding it all together, that's the chanting. So this is the process that we're going to go through. Chanting, breathing mindfulness, loving kindness, breathing mindfulness, and back to chanting. So let me see if you guys have any questions before we do this together. Anything you'd like to ask about loving kindness meditation or conducting this, or what it's useful for and why it's important as part of the path. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. Oh, here we go. It looks like Ted or Christine has a question.
David, I think I know the answer to this, but you had mentioned 6 months to a year, and your anger and ill will subside. I would imagine that is also practicing the Eightfold Path and everything else that you're teaching us, as opposed to just doing massive loving kindness meditation and all will be well in the world. That's it.
Yeah, you're going to need the Eightfold Path along with the loving kindness meditation, but it's not that all anger and hatred is going to be eliminated in 6 months to a year. What I'm sharing is wait at least 6 months or a year that you haven't seen any anger or bitterness in your mind, and then that's where you know that you won't need loving kindness meditation any longer. So you might need to do this for multiple years before you get to the point where it is 6 months to a year that you haven't seen any anger in your mind. But yes, it's combined with the Eightfold Path that you would like to be able to be practicing all those factors, and then this comes in as part of that last factor of right concentration, part of your meditation practice. Okay. All right, looks like we have a question coming in here from Julia. Let's see. Thank you, Teacher David. How many times a day should we do meditation? Should we alternate between breathing mindfulness or only do it during times of anger? So it would be wise to build up your meditation practice in general to 2 or 3 sessions for 30 minutes or more. And out of those 2 or 3 sessions, have at least one of them be loving kindness. And it's ideal to do loving kindness in the morning because you're going out in your day, you're going to be interacting with a lot of beings. So if you're doing loving kindness in the morning, this will really set you up for a great day. But that doesn't mean you couldn't do it at midday or evening as well. Like maybe you get home from work, maybe it's been a hard day, maybe you're having challenges with the kids or your life partner, and gosh, you just feel so angry by 6 o'clock at night. Do some loving kindness meditation because you've got a little bit of breathing mindfulness on each side. So do that loving kindness and knock down that anger, because the longer you allow the mind to stay wired with that anger, and as long as it continues to stay in the mind, your mind's going to stay wired that way. So whenever you have discontentedness, you would like to get it out of your mind as quick as possible. And you don't have to hurry or rush, but you're not interested in allowing the mind to dwell in any of these discontent feelings. So anytime you need loving kindness meditation, you can use it. But if you're going to kind of have like a standard schedule, the morning is really good to do your loving kindness meditation. Okay, looks like Ted or Kristen has a question.
Sorry, I got another one. Will the practice of loving kindness meditation, generally speaking, be sandwiched between, or is it just a solid session of loving kindness?
It's best if you put loving kindness after a little bit of breathing mindfulness meditation, because you're going to kind of get some awareness of mind, awareness of breath, get really focused, and that's going to make your loving kindness meditation that much better. But you could just go right in and start doing loving kindness meditation. There's no harm in doing it that way. If you only had 5 minutes or 10 minutes, that might be what you decide to do, is just go right in and do loving kindness. If you have the time, though, having a breathing mindfulness meditation for about 3 to 5 minutes at the beginning is going to make your loving kindness that much more effective. The loving kindness meditation at the end, it's there for you if you need it, because sometimes what you're going to notice is that prior to loving kindness meditation, you're not angry, you're not frustrated. Of course, you have ill will in your mind, but you're not angry or frustrated. And now when you go into your loving kindness meditation, it might trigger some anger and it starts coming up in your mind. And now you've got that breathing mindfulness meditation at the end to knock that down. Because for example, with me, I had all kinds of difficulties with my mom when I was in my childhood. And then in my early adulthood, I started doing meditation and stuff like this. And that stuff that she had done was long in the past. But when I would do loving kindness for her, that prior to the meditation, I was fine. I was just, doing my thing, doing my day, and it might have been in the morning, 9:30 in the morning, and I would go sit down and do my loving kindness meditation. I would include mom in the meditation, and I would start remembering the things that she had done when we were in my childhood. And now at the end of the meditation, I was more angry than when I had started. So I started using some breathing mindfulness meditation at the end to knock that down and knock that down so I could end the meditation having loving kindness in my mind and having gotten rid of all the anger. So it's there for you if you need it. Because as you train your mind for a period of time, you're going to get to the point where during your loving kindness meditation, you're just going to feel all this love and kindness permeating in the mind, just like the Buddha talks about. Your mind will be filled up with this loving kindness. And you don't need to go to a breathing mindfulness meditation at the end of that if you don't need to. The loving kindness meditation is going to cultivate this unconditional love and kindness for other beings, where you don't have any conditions that need to be met in order for you to have love and kindness for them. So if your mind is permeated with loving kindness, you don't necessarily need that breathing mindfulness meditation at the end. But if you did it, it's not going to cause any harm because this loving kindness is unconditioned. So you can't cut it off and let it go if it's true loving kindness. If it's conditional, there's a condition that's causing it, so you can cut it off and let it go. But when you get to unconditioned mental qualities, which is what you're cultivating with this meditation, you're not going to be able to cut that off and let it go. That's why the enlightened mind is a permanent mental state that you can't stop experiencing peacefulness and joy and happiness when you're in the enlightened mental state, because it's unconditioned. It's impossible to eliminate it out of the mind. So it's the same thing here, that if you would like to do the breathing mindfulness meditation at the end, you can, but over time you're going to see that you're not going to probably need it because you're going to have so much loving kindness permeating in the mind that you don't really need that to cut anything off at the end. Okay, I think that's all of our questions, but let me just check YouTube just to be sure. Okay, I don't see any questions there. So let's go into some meditation. As I mentioned, I'm going to do the chanting to ease us into the meditation. Then I'll do some guidance in order to help us with the breathing mindfulness meditation. We'll have about 3 minutes or so of breathing mindfulness. I'm going to come in with some loving kindness. We're going to go back to the breathing mindfulness and back to the chanting. I'll guide you guys through this so you kind of get the structure of it, and then you'll be able to start doing this on your own. So if you like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, those are the 3 positions that we use for loving kindness meditation. There is a walking position, but we don't use that one for loving kindness meditation. So if you like to take a position, either seated, lying, or standing, this is usually best. Arahang Samma Sambuddho Bhagava Bhutang Bhagavanhang Apivateyami Savakato Bhagavata Tammo Dhammang Namasami Supatipano Bhagavato Sāvaka Saṅkho Saṅghang Namami Namo Tassa Bhagavato Arahato Samma Sambuddhassa Namo Tassa ภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสมะภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมุโนสกขาโตโรกาวิตูอนุเตโรปุริสาดัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะติ Okay, with the lower body and hands and arms comfortable, in the upper body erect, just close the eyes and start breathing in through the nose and out through the nose. Here you're just looking to establish the breath, a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath, not forced or controlled, just a gradual inhale through the nose, experiencing the full breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. Your breath may not match up with the guidance that I'm providing, and that's okay. This is your practice. I'm just here for guidance. You can use this voice as a reminder that whenever you get to the next inhale, breathing gradually through the nose, developing a nice, natural, steady, consistent breath. And then, whenever you're ready, exhale out through the nose. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the breath well established, start fixating the mind on the breath, either the sound of the breath coming into the nose or the sensation of air moving over the skin into the nose. The breath is the present moment. Fixate the mind on the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. With the mind fixated on the breath, whenever you notice that it moves off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath the present moment. No need to observe the thought, label it, judge it, analyze it, or even try to figure out where it's coming from. Whenever you notice that the mind is moved off the breath, cut that off, let it go, and come back to the breath, the present moment. Breathing in and out. Breathing in and out. I'm going to be quiet now and let you do this work of focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Then I'll be back with more guidance on breathing, on loving kindness meditation. You have nowhere to go. There's nothing to do. No one needs you right now. This is your time to focus on the breath. Breathing in and out. Continuing to breathe in through the nose and out through the nose. Repeat these affirmations in the mind on the out breath. May I be peaceful. May I be safe. May I be well. May I be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May mom and dad be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness and the suffering that it causes. May my friends, family, neighbors, and co-workers all be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who have harmed me be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all those who I have harmed be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. May all beings, wherever they reside, be peaceful. May they be safe. May they be well. May they be free of all discontentedness in the suffering that it causes. Now return back to breathing mindfulness meditation, focusing on the breath, cutting off and letting go anytime the mind moves off the breath. Breathing in and out. สัมมาสัมพุทโธภะคะวาพุทธังภะคะวันตังอภิวาเทมิสวากขาโตภะคะวะตาธัมโมธัมมังนามัสสามิสุปฏิปันโนภะคะวะโตสาวกสังโฆสังฆังนามามินะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะนะโมตัสสะภะคะวะโตอะระหะโตสัมมาสัมพุทธัสสะอิติปิโสภะคะวะอะระหังสัมมาสัมพุทโธวิชาจารณังสัมมโนสคาโตโรกาวิตุอนุเตโรปุริสาธัมมาสติสัตตาตาวามนุสนังพุทโธภะคะวะเตOkay, if you guys would like to slowly make your way out of meditation. Okay, one of the things I'm going to share with you guys here is in this meditation, you guys heard me share and have the affirmation of, may all those who have caused me harm be peaceful. And then ultimately we got to, may all those who I have caused harm to be peaceful. As you guys remember from the Four Noble Truths, it's not possible for someone else to cause you discontentedness, and it's not possible for you to cause somebody else discontentedness, but you can cause harm. And the difference between these two things is that discontentedness is where the mind is experiencing those conditioned feelings. The conditioned pleasant feelings, painful feelings are neither painful nor pleasant. Nobody can cause you to experience that, and you can't cause somebody else to experience that. But you can cause harm, and people can cause you harm. What harm is where someone has harmed your material possessions, your physical body, or your reputation. If someone's caused you harm, then perhaps your mind has gotten angry. But the reason why you got angry is not from the harm itself. It's because of the craving for things to be a certain way. So, for example, if I stole somebody's car, I've caused them harm because now they can't go to work. They can't pick up their kids from school. They can't go to the grocery store and buy supplies. I've caused this person harm. But if they get angry because their car's not there, that's their mind craving permanence and wanting their car to be permanent. So I've created conditions in which their cravings can get triggered. right? So we can cause other beings harm, but we can't cause them discontentedness, and other people can cause us harm. And this is an ideal time where the mind can potentially become discontent, is when harm is being inflicted upon you. But for an enlightened being, they're not experiencing any harm from others. But even if they did, for some reason, like if somebody just walked up to an enlightened being and punched them in the face, they wouldn't get angry. There's no way that that anger could arise. So I would like to just be sure you guys understand the difference between harm and discontentedness. And keeping in mind that we're not sending our loving kindness to others. We're not trying to change others. We're not trying to invoke some mystical, magical being to change mom or dad or anything like that. This is transforming your mind and rewiring your mind. So what I'm going to do is open up to any and all questions you guys have here at the end of class. Anything you'd like to ask about loving kindness meditation, let me know. You can put that into Facebook, YouTube, or Zoom, or you can raise your hand in Zoom and ask any questions that you like. It looks like we have a question here from Chrissy that came in, and I don't think Chrissy's in class anymore, but I'll still answer it in case she's maybe moved to one of the social media platforms. She's saying, Teacher David, when one is doing breathing mindfulness meditation and starts to struggle with letting go of a traumatic thought, is it best to stop, regroup, and try again, or just keep trying to push through? Thank you. Each situation is going to be a little bit different, Chrissy. In some situations, you might decide to stop and regroup. Maybe the best way to let that thing go is to break out of your meditation, go walk around a little bit, get a glass of water, go for a walk, and then come back and start meditating. In some cases, that's going to be the situation that you might find yourself in. In other cases, maybe your mind can maybe let this go if you keep going in meditation a little bit. I don't suggest you force it or push it, but you might be able to stay in meditation in some cases and just let this thing go. So this is where you're going to have to try through trial and error and figure out what's working best in any one given situation. There isn't just one permanent answer for that. Looks like Kristen has a question. Let's see. Go ahead, Kristen.
Yeah, I think you just kind of answered it. Just trying not to kind of force it. Like I was sort of doing it and kind of maybe concentrating too hard on it, if that makes sense, and almost like willing it into being. And so, but you just answered it. Just kind of say it and be light about it, and not. It's not about the other. And it's just a thing. Yeah, I think you answered.
Okay, sure. One thing I'll just share here that can probably help you a little bit too is, when the mind gets its cravings triggered, and now the mind is angry, and the mind has aversion where we push someone away in the unenlightened state, where the mind doesn't realize that the anger is coming from your own mind. You might push people away. This is called aversion. Typically what we do is we erect a wall between us and them. And it's like, we don't want to see that person. We don't hear from that person. We don't even know they're alive. We just want to push this away. That's what the mind thinks is solving the problem. So because this wall is erected between us and this other person, when we're doing loving kindness meditation, it's almost like breaking through this wall, and it can feel like very numb sometimes. It's like, I just don't notice any loving kindness there, perhaps. Sometimes people think that way, that no matter how much they're doing the loving kindness meditation, they're just not noticing any loving kindness. And this is all the more reason to keep having that same person or that group of people in your meditation, because you can do a person or you can do groups of people too. Like if somebody has anger towards all police officers or lawyers or something like this, or doctors, they could put a group of people in their meditation. And what this is doing is helping to break down that wall. And oftentimes the very first several times that you do the meditation, you just don't notice the loving kindness because it's just not there. And that's all the more reason why to keep doing this. So if you're noticing that you're just not feeling it, you don't have to force it, you don't have to push it, just keep gradually wearing away at this. The Buddha gives a great analogy. He talks about this digging tool, and he says if you dig with this tool every day and it has a wooden handle, you're wearing away the wood from this digging tool. You're wearing away the wood on the handle every single day, but you don't know how much wood you're wearing away. But when all the wood has been worn away, or at least enough that you can't use this tool anymore and the handle needs to be replaced, he says you're going to know that. So you're not going to know each day how much wood is being worn away, but you'll know when the handle needs to be replaced. And the same thing is true as he relates this analogy to loving kindness and all these other fetters, that when you're practicing this loving kindness meditation and you're practicing loving kindness in day-to-day life, you're not going to know how much anger and hatred and ill will you've worn away each day. But when it's completely gone, you'll know that. So that's like each day I was meditating with my mom in the meditation, I didn't know how much anger I was wearing away. But when it was completely gone, I knew that because I was around my mom and I was no longer angered. I was no longer bitter. I was no longer hostile. No matter what she would say to me, it didn't affect me. I didn't have any anger back towards her. So in the past, it wasn't that way, where she would do something, I would be angry right back, where once it was all gone, I knew that. So you guys can keep that in mind as you're doing the loving kindness meditation, that some days you're just not going to notice it. And it's just not quite feeling like things are gelling. But then over time, as you gradually wear this away, you'll notice when the anger is completely gone. Okay. So I don't see any other questions anywhere. So what I'm going to do then is just end class by thanking all of you guys for joining. Thank you for your interest in learning the teachings of the Buddha and your dedication and determination to learning and practicing these teachings. This is exactly what it's going to take to be able to wear away that anger, hatred, and ill will and all those lesser versions. Of course, the Eightfold Path needs to be well underway, but bringing this in is really going to enhance your ability to eliminate your anger, hatred, and ill will. As you guys have questions, we got 3 more classes just specifically on loving kindness to be able to help you, but you can always ask questions through asking questions in a live class, through posting in our Facebook group, sending a private message, or scheduling personal guidance. You're always welcome to reach out to get help at any point. But we have 3 more classes here that I'm going to be helping you to build up your loving kindness meditation. So thank you guys for joining. And if you'd like to join for these future classes, this Sunday, I'm going to be in chapter 1 of our book, Developing a Life Practice, The Path That Leads to Enlightenment. This chapter is titled Universal Teachings, Love, No Harm, and Good Morals. You'll be able to see this is where I'm going to show you how the teachings of other traditions are kind of leading to something that is got some commonalities with the teachings of the Buddha. I'll share these universal teachings with you and help you see where there's this bridge of things you might have learned in the past through Christianity or Muslim teachings or Hinduism or any other teachings that you might have been exposed to. You're going to see these commonalities across all of these things as you're moving into the teachings of the Buddha. And then next Wednesday, we'll do part 2 of our loving kindness meditation. So thank you all again for joining, and perhaps I'll see you guys in one of these future classes. Be well and have a lovely rest of your day. Take care. Sawadee Kap.
Thank you for listening to this podcast. To provide support for this podcast, visit patreon.com/support Buddha. To access more teachings, visit buddhadailywisdom.com. There, you will discover a full range of courses, retreats, and online resources to assist you on the path to enlightenment. Remember to establish a daily, consistent meditation practice, along with learning and practicing these teachings. A well-developed meditation practice is the foundation in which to train the mind to attain enlightenment.